Hey everybody, my name is Joe, and I'm so glad that you're joining us this weekend at an Eastside campus or online. I'm super excited because next weekend is Surge! If you haven't heard yet, Surge is a free, action-packed event designed just for students that is happening next weekend. Think winter camp vibes, but right here at an Eastside campus. You will have the opportunity to not attend just one service next weekend, but we hope you'll come to every student service that is being offered at your campus for this special event. We've been working hard to create a whole camp-like experience where every session offered is new and fresh and builds upon itself. And we want you to enjoy all of it. This unforgettable weekend brings together tons of students for epic competitions, maybe some dance battles, delicious foods. There might be some pie face. It's gonna be non-stop fun. But that's not all. You'll also get to connect in breakout groups with your awesome leaders and experience meaningful moments of growth in your life. It's more than just a weekend. It's a chance for you to grow in your faith, to build lasting friendships, and to witness God at work in your lives. But here's the deal. It's not just for you. It's for everyone. This is for your friends at school, in your neighborhood, and on your team. You bump shoulders with, DM, and sit next to dozens, if not hundreds, of students who need to experience Jesus' love, forgiveness, and freedom in their lives. But how do they know that there is something better in Jesus? How do they know how great Eastside is? How will they know about Surge unless you share? This week, I want to talk about the power of your story and the power of your invite. Some of us love sharing our life stories with others, while some of us would rather talk about nearly anything else. We all have different levels of comfort when it comes to talking about ourselves, so let's start with something easy. Turn to the person sitting next to you and share what's one thing that they don't know about you. I'll give you a second. No one but you could have told us the things you just told us, because you're an expert on you. No one can talk about you better than you. Even if you don't like to admit it, you like talking about yourself. You're probably the easiest topic for you to talk about. Now, it's not always easy or comfortable to talk about ourselves, especially when it comes to matters of faith. But if you're ready, I hope you'll engage your curiosity for the next few minutes so that you can look and see what your story and a simple invite to join you can do for others. My faith in Jesus is a really important part of my story, but I have to be honest, sometimes I'm really awkward when I try to talk about it. The first time I was ever really challenged to share about my faith in Jesus was on a missions trip to England. And during my freshman year of high school, we actually went into their public schools, and we were able to share about what it meant to follow Jesus. I can't even imagine that being allowed to happen today in your schools. We would get into the classes or the assemblies and do funny skits, and then our youth pastor would talk. Easy, right? Well, toward the end of each session, we would break into smaller groups so that we could share our personal stories of how Jesus had impacted our lives. I still remember the first couple of classes we went into and how terrified I was to talk about Jesus. Here I was surrounded by this group of kids that were so excited to meet an American and hear what I had to share. But because I was so afraid, I would spend the entire time showing pictures of my family, my friends, and high school activities from back home, and nothing about the good news that Jesus could offer them. After a couple sessions, my youth pastor pulled me aside and said,
Joe, if you're not going to tell them about who Jesus is, who will?
Something changed in me when I heard those words. I had a responsibility. God had led me all the way to England to share my story. His story. And from that point on, I intentionally pushed through the fear, making it my mission to make sure they heard the good news. That trip taught me some pretty important things, like the fact that I shouldn't let anything hold me back from talking about my faith. There are so many reasons why talking about your faith or inviting someone to church can be hard. Maybe you feel like you don't know how, or Maybe you're afraid of being rejected, or you're not sure what you're supposed to say, or you don't feel qualified, like you're not an expert on Jesus or something. If you don't feel like an expert on God, guess what? You're not, and you never will be. But do you know what you are an expert on? You and your story. People can debate or disagree with your beliefs, but it's hard to argue with the story of someone's lived experience. Today, we're talking about how our stories and what we've experienced and discovered about Jesus are important for us to share with others. Let's look at the story of a man whose name, I don't know. He was so average that when his story was recorded in the Bible, no one thought to write it down. So maybe we could give him a name. I don't know. Let's call him Bob. The story we're about to see takes place after Jesus died, rose from the dead, and left the earth again. After his departure, Jesus' followers worked to spread the word about who Jesus is and what a relationship with him meant for anyone who believed. One day, two of Jesus' followers, Peter and John, were on their way into the temple to worship. And on the way, they encountered a man who was paralyzed from birth. The Bible says that every day this man was carried to the temple to beg for food and money. Those were his options, beg or die. This man had long since accepted that he would never walk again and was busy making the best of his circumstances. So when Peter and John walked by, the man did what he always did. He asked for money and for food. You can find this story in Acts 3, 1 through 11.
Peter and John went to the temple to pray. As they neared the temple, a man who couldn't walk from the time he was born was being carried in. Each day, the man was put beside the temple gate so he could beg from the people going into the temple. When the man saw Peter and John, he asked them for some money.
Please help.
Peter said, "Look at us." The man looked up at them eagerly, thinking that they would give him some money. But Peter said, "I don't have any money for you, but I'll give you what I have. In the name of Jesus Christ, get up and walk." Then Peter took the man by the hand and helped him up. As he did, the man's feet and ankles were instantly healed and strengthened.
Woohoo!
He jumped up and began to walk, then walking, leaping, and praising God.
Come on!
He went into the temple with them. All the people saw him walking and heard him praising God.
Wait, is that? I think so.
When they realized he was the man who couldn't walk who had been sitting outside the gate asking for money, they were absolutely amazed.
Wow!
Peter asked the people, "What's so surprising about this? Why stare at us as though we made this man walk by our own power?" He reminded all of the people that it was God's power who healed this man and encouraged all of them to turn from their sins and follow God with their whole hearts.
I'm not sure what Bob was expecting when Peter and John grabbed his hands and hauled him to his feet, but I guess he wasn't expecting to be healed. If I were him, I would have been pretty skeptical. But God gave Peter and John the supernatural ability to believe in something completely out of the ordinary. He had spent a lifetime living the same old daily routine. Get up, get picked up by your friends, get dropped off at the temple, ask for money, get told no, keep asking for money, get picked up, go home, back to bed, and over again. After so much time, I wonder if this man had stopped expecting anything particularly good or extraordinary to even happen to him. Maybe that's why Peter and John had to demand his attention. He had lost hope. Maybe that's why he reacted with such joy. He was hoping for some coins, but he received so much more. He was given a chance to have a brand new life. That's a pretty miraculous story, but that's not the end of the story. Did you catch what happened? He ran, he jumped, and he praised God for his healing where everyone in the temple could see him. He wasn't content quietly returning home. He needed to tell the world what had just happened, and the people who saw him were filled with wonder and amazement. This man's healing got people's attention. When they gathered around Peter and John, they began to share with the people who gathered who Jesus was, why he healed this man, and what they needed to do to get right with God. Bob, just by sharing his story of healing, created a chain reaction for others to have their eyes open to God's truth. He wasn't an expert on the God or the Bible. He just knew what he'd experienced, healing. We're not experts either, but we are eyewitnesses to the work of God has done in our own lives. For you, maybe God helped you overcome some fears or obstacles or difficulties, or he changed your heart in some significant way. Maybe God gave you purpose that you didn't have before. Maybe he's present and active in your life on a daily basis, or maybe you just really enjoy the experience that you have each weekend here at Eastside. Whatever your story looks like, and your story will always still be in progress, you have a story to share. Just like God used this man's story to open people's eyes to God's amazing love, God can use your story or your personal invite to do the same. God can use you to help others see him. So, what's your story? I mean, each of our stories are unique because we're all in different paths with different circumstances and different experiences when it comes to God. Some of us have been following Jesus for years, while some of us still aren't sure what we believe about him. Some of us have dramatic stories of life change, while some of our stories are pretty straightforward. Some of us already have experience with sharing our stories of faith or inviting others to church, while some of us have never tried to put it into words. But here's what we all have in common. We're all created by God. We're all loved by God, and God is present and working in all of our lives. And there are two ways that I think that you can look at your story of faith. First off, you have a big story. This is the big picture story of how God is working in your life over the course of your life. It's the story of how you can know and follow Jesus and how he transformed your life as a result. Now, if you have asked Jesus into your heart and to lead you, this is the story of why and how that happened. It's your big story. Secondly, you have lots of small stories. These are the everyday moments where God shows up in your life. These stories are about what you're learning, how you're growing, what questions you're asking, and how God is changing you and what God is doing through you. Or you simply had the best experience ever at church because the games are awesome, or you enjoy your small group. When God changed the healed man's life, remember Bob? He didn't waste any time in sharing his story with others. He immediately jumped up and ran to celebrate what God has done. His gratitude, joy, and passion compelled others to pay attention. And like the healed man, you and I don't need to wait to share about God. We can start today. Wherever you are on your journey with God, something you have experienced could make a big difference in someone else's life. In fact, I want to ask you to share your story or invite someone to Surge this week. So before you leave here today, I want to challenge you to write down one thing, the name of one person you want to share your story with or invite to Surge. What if sharing your story or throwing out an invite to come with you next weekend had the same effect on your friends as the story we shared today? Can you imagine if one more person found forgiveness, healing, freedom, and a forever future with Jesus? There's absolutely nothing in the world better than experiencing that transformation happening. So this week, I hope you choose to look and see what God has done in your life so your story can help others take a closer look at what Jesus could do in their lives. God can use you to help others see him. So go share it.